All right, folks. Average is failure. Session two. We got started with. We took about half an hour just to get just to get our mics and stuff set up. You would think that we would know how to do this by now, since we're on Zooms and Microsoft Teams and all this kind of stuff all the time. But lo and behold, technology does its thing when it wants to, man. So, but just want to welcome everybody back to the Average is Failure show. This is the podcast edition of what we're trying to do here. And eventually we'll come up with all kinds of, like, those sub slogans and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure we'll develop. But I think at least one of them that has come to mind, and some of it came through in conversations that we've had, Joe, is a phrase came to mind called everyday greatness. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we talk about average is failure, I think that's what I over my years of thinking about what is it that I wanted to convey through that phrase, I think I'm finally comfortable in saying that's what it is. Because, and I alluded to this on the past episodes, just pursuing money wasn't enough. Pursuing status wasn't enough. Matter of fact, I feel like sometimes those things can corrupt who you're supposed to be. Not to say that they're bad in and of themselves. I'm not, by all means, part of what I want to talk about is if there's money to be gotten, and in a way that is ethical and makes sense, and that God has a plan for you to go and get it. But I also think that sometimes we're going after money, and other material things that, man, might actually take us off of the path that, is designed for you. And for some, it might be the best path for you might be to live a little bit more humbly, and God will allow you to do his thing through you in the world, whatever that might be, right, in that way. So everyday greatness. I think I came up with a couple of other phrases that just came to mind. I was like, yo, these are actually pretty good. We're gonna have to coin these joints. So yeah, man. But we want to have a little bit of a discussion today. Well, first of all, Joe, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well today.
Say hello to the people, man.
I'm doing pretty well today. And yourself?
Yo, I'm good, man. We finally got some sunshine. I think I realized this when I was maybe in college, but sunshine, maybe even in high school, sunshine does so much to pick my mood up, man. And I'm perfectly fine in the rain as well, too. I'm starting to actually appreciate rainy days a little bit more now that I'm older. But there's nothing like when the sun is shining, man, to just help things to feel better.
Yeah, man, especially the breaking of spring. I mean, people don't understand, the level and how vitamin D affects them on a day-to-day basis, especially us as African Americans. A lot of times we're vitamin D deficient, and we don't know that, and it actually does affect your mood. It's one thing that I learned with, my wife and just going to the doctor. And, it is very important to get sunlight, and it's very important to get natural sunlight. So this time of the year, we want to promote people going outside, taking a walk around the neighborhood, doing something that's physically active, but getting as much sun as you can, because it definitely will change your mood and your outlook on things.
Yeah, man. Matter of fact, I'm hoping I can get a walk outside before the day ends, because I don't know if it's going to get rainy this weekend or not. But yeah, and truthfully, you and I both work in offices that don't get any sunlight. So that's like 8 hours a day where, we kind of hold up, and not getting to see outside, not getting to see vegetation, anything like that. So I'm just learning to get as much of that sunshine as I possibly can, brother.
Yes.
So let's dive into what we wanted to talk about today. I need to stop saying that's one of the things I need to grow and work on. Like, I know how to talk without doing it too, but if I'm not intentional about it, I keep doing it.
It's so interesting. So when I was doing interviews for my book, my wife, I just almost said it, and I just did it just now. She was like, Joe, you got to work on the piece, because you say a lot. And I said, that is a natural, filler for people. And I do need to work on that as well.
Yeah. So again, part of average is failure. Y'all are here in real time. We trying to work on stuff, y'all. A plethora of stuff. Okay. one of the things, as I just avoided saying again, one of the things that we wanted to do was look back on our previous conversation, think about, where there may be some gaps, because even though we want to cover a lot in these podcasts and we want to develop a lot as far as education for all, but we anticipate that our education, what we're trying to do, is probably going to be most helpful for Black young adult men and women, but also older adult men and women, because I know I've spoken places before where things have been helpful for them, and even, the youth. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Joe, was, okay, yes, we talked about what averages failure means to us last week, but my question for you is, what is your journey with that phrase? What does that look like? How are you internalizing that real time? What are you pursuing in which the phrase averages failure actually makes sense to some of the pursuits that you're going after, man?
I think
to ask it better, how are you living averages failure?
I think one of the things, or how you go about living it or internalizing that phrase, is by doing a lot of self-evaluation in the processes of the projects that I'm dealing with, or the interactions or relationships that I'm in. The easiest one for me to kind of tackle, because it's just easier for me, is like doing the journey of putting together a book. And I recently, did a children's book, which is based on me and my sons and our family dynamic in regards to him wanting to do gymnastics. And I think, that average is failure. The way I would internalize it when talking about the book is, writing the book is the first step, or putting it on paper. But what do you do after you have a book? As a self-published author, you're in charge of marketing and promoting your book. So that means you got to hit the ground and figure out how are you going to get other people's eyes on the book. So for me, it took me coming outside of my personal element and my comfort zone of being an introvert. I'm used to, staying in the house, doing things with my family. But for me to be in my home and to just kind of enjoy my living space and watch TV and watch sports, I'm at peace. You can't sell a book that way, though. So I had to kind of do things that I normally wouldn't do, which is like reaching out to people, doing interviews, actually, setting up, events and things of that nature. Like, I'm leaving tonight with my kids to go to Ohio to do a book signing. That's not who Joe normally would be. And knowing that, if I want more, I have to do more. And in this phase of my life, I'm going to have to do some things that, even the people around me that know me very well are wowed by. I think I've received more praise from, family members and my wife and my kids than I ever have, just by doing this book. Because the one thing about it was that they were like, okay, you're going to do it. Like, I only told my wife and obviously my kids about the book in the beginning. Nobody else knew about the book until it was literally finished in a complete format. And when my wife saw the book, she was like, Joe, this is a real book. Like, I knew you were writing a book, but like, I didn't think it was going to be as professional. And not that she was taking a jab at me, but she know I'm a laid back guy. I'm not out in the forefront, never have been, and reluctant to do it now. Even when we started the podcast and I did my introduction, the one thing I didn't say was that I was an author and I wrote a book. Like, I just won't do it. Like, that's just not who I am, because I don't even see myself in that realm. Like, I wrote a book because I love my son and I wanted to tell other people about it.
Facts. Do you have a copy of the book right there?
I'm
that you can
always,
show the people?
I always usually have a copy, but it's interesting. I might not hold 2 seconds. I might not have it. I used to keep copies in my desk.
So while you're doing that, right? Similar for me, and what I think I have copies of mine right here, right? So folks who are watching on, if you're listening, you can't see the book in my hand right now, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. But I have a copy of my book right here.
Oh yeah, I got a copy.
And right, okay, there goes Jelps. And I think one of the challenges for me has always been has been that point. There are a lot of projects that I've taken on which have been good in and of themselves, but there are areas where I would have to grow in order for me to put it this way. This might be a better way for me to phrase it. I was not average in terms of being just an author, okay, and writing a book. However, when we write books, you write books for them to be engaged with. And it's a different skill set that's required to get your book in front of people. It takes a different skill set than it takes to just write the book. And so, in this phase of my life, as I continue doing projects, that is one of the areas of growth for me is, okay, the things that I'm creating that I want to put in front of people to engage with, well, how do I get them? I've been weak in that area. All right. And so I'm trying to figure out even myself, like, how do I do that? And to your point, even with my book, sometimes I used to have feelings of, again, imposter syndrome, things like that. My book isn't good enough. If I could go back again, I would write it a little bit differently. And so I have copies of my book sitting around doing, nothing. And so I've been motivated. Actually, I've been motivated by you to go back in there, because many people, when I was pushing the book a little bit more, said that it was helpful. And so it goes back again to that conversation about perfection. Does something need to be perfect for you to launch it out there, all that kind of stuff, and we'll get into that in deeper down the line. But
and I could talk about that part too, real quick. That does it need to be perfect? And I always say that, what I know for myself, I love, products that are refined together. And, when you get it, you have everything you need. But guess what? Just like the iPhone, do you get updates on your iPhone? That means that there are glitches, there are things that are not complete, but they give you that product and they selling it to you for a pretty penny.
Yep, a pretty penny, bro.
So I wouldn't say that it needs to be a perfect product. It needs to be something that you're proud of, that you're willing to, if there is a correction that need to be made, you make that. Because for myself, I wrote the book. That's the first edition. Guess what? I already have a second edition that I just actually finally got printed out. I actually added a coloring book and an activity book that go along with it. And guess what? Those are multiple streams of income that actually adds to the book. So that's that leveling up. And that's that average is failure piece, where you're saying, even though I have a book, there's much more that I can do with this book than just give it to somebody. And it's just one book. Now I have multiple versions of the book. I actually had it translated in Spanish as well. So that'll be coming out as well too.
Nice.
So I think trying to think outside the box and being diverse. And because we are, we're African Americans, we always talk about diversity, but how diverse are we?
Yeah.
Do we think about other people in that diversity?
Yeah.
I'm also coming out with one. I'm actually going to have it being translated into sign language as well too. Because at the end of the day, if you want other people to actually get the information, you have to put it in a form that they can receive it. So.
Yeah, hearing it from the man himself, man, doing some big things.
And it don't cost a lot because I'm cheap.
Right. But and that's crucial, right? Because some of the reasons why, even when I first tried to launch things underneath the Averages Failure name, perfection is actually what got in the way of the success. Right? That's going to be a key phrase right there. I wanted it to look a certain way. I was just talking with somebody else this week and letting them know, like, you have to give your story or your journey space to breathe, right? Meaning that after you have gathered all the knowledge from other individuals and how they were successful in launching whatever it is that they launched, it's good to get that information and do your best to internalize it. But then you have to, wisdom says, when I look out there and see how they were successful, I can gain lessons from it, but I have to pay attention to my unique context to figure out how do I apply it to my context. And for me, I wanted everything to be fancy right from jump, et cetera, where I probably would have had more longevity in the beginning if I had just started small, kept things basic, but at least consistent and able to keep going. But unfortunately, because I was trying to, get to where I saw other people at immediately, I kept on having to stop. Why? Because I didn't have the resources, to be able to keep it going. So that's important. Any other areas where you're trying to implement the average is failure mantra?
I think it's at home as well too, just with my family. Our dynamic, I mean, everybody thinks their family is unique. So in our household, there's myself, my wife who is in school, who's finishing up her nursing degree. She went back to school. She's been back to school multiple times since we've been married. She came already having a bachelor's degree, but changing, careers. She wanted to do something in the medical field. So she's finishing up her degree now. She should be finished in mid-May, and then she will have to take her board exams. But trying to figure out, and we talked about this the last time, that family balance. With having two kids, one going into middle school, one is in elementary school, both having their own unique desires to do well in school, but also do well in their specific sport that they love. One loves gymnastics, the other ones love basketball. And we've had times, especially this year, in which we had to really figure out the balance. And part of that average is failure, trying to figure it all out and trying to live above and trying to do more, is having real conversations with your children about how life works and how we all have to make sacrifices at times, and that there are going to be moments when mom is going to be the person that's taking the lead and other times when dad is taking the lead. There was one Saturday where my son had a gymnastics competition in the Richmond area, and my son had a basketball game up in Woodbridge. My wife, she's in school, so pretty much we see her, but we don't see her. And the setup was, okay, Joe, you're going to go to the gymnastics event in Richmond with the oldest son. I'm going to stay here and go to the basketball game with our son, and then once he's finished, I'm going to study. But guess what? I was the coach of the basketball team. So I had to tell the people on the team. Now, luckily, there was another coach at the time. I told him, I said, you know what? I'm not going to be able to be there this Saturday, but my wife is going to be here. She's going to bring my son. I got to do something else and whatnot. And having that conversation with our kids and actually figuring it out, and nobody feeling guilty that we can't be in two places at one time. It's the funny thing about it is it was my son's best game that he had, even though I wasn't there. But, I think trying to find a way to do everything and to please everybody in a way that is going to build them up and show them that, we love you, we care about you, and we're willing to make these sacrifices. And even at times, parents have to make those hard decisions. That's why it took my son forever to be in gymnastics, because we knew it was going to be a crazy commitment. Gymnastics is a year-round sport. Even though you only see it during certain times, they practice in all year round, multiple times a week, multiple hours. And guess what? You pay in every month. meaning you pay the same amount every month.
Wow.
Plus, you got to pay for all these other things as
Mm,
well. So one of the things that we had to do was, hey, you know what, we got to financially be able to pay for this stuff too.
yeah.
So that means that daddy got to be at work at some point in time. So they got to
Yeah.
support me and understand that, you know what, I'm going to be at work and it's important that I'm able to be fully functional and fully alert there. So there's things that have to be, I guess, in a sense, um, managed and balanced that, what, daddy might not be able to do everything
Hmm.
at home. So that means that some other people are going to have to take over some of the home duties. Um, my wife kind of just told us, hey, I'm gonna be in school, I'm gonna be studying. So you know what, y'all figure it out half the time. She like, I'm gonna cook one meal a week.
Hmm.
We're gonna have to figure out the rest. But we've kind of figured it out. But it was a lot of conversation with each other, with our family, being honest. Sometimes we're not always honest about how we feel about certain things, or how certain things are going to look going forward. Um, I know I agreed to a whole lot when my wife said she was going to school. And then when you start getting through the semesters,
Hmm.
it's like,
Hmm.
man, you were serious. You really said that you was only gonna cook once a week.
Hmm.
Like, there's another couple of days we would like to eat something else. And then also too, because we were trying to reserve and save money, we weren't going out to eat as much. So
Right.
going and getting the Chick-fil-A here and there and whatnot, like we had to, make some major, cutbacks and decisions for the greater good of her
Hmm.
getting through the program and us as a family staying together and having everything that everybody needed, because
Hmm.
the show don't stop. The show never stops. And as men, and as leaders, we're expected to, find ways and make things happen. And when your wife or your kids come with an idea, they when they give it to you, they expect you to execute it
Right.
somehow, some way.
Right.
And that was like my charge. That's been my charge. I think, obviously being married and having kids, that's kind of been my charge for a while.
Hmm.
Um, I think I told my coworkers the other day, that me and my son, we were having our Sunday conversation. We call it church talk on Sundays. And we were talking about something in particular. And the next thing he started talking about the future. And then he said, Dad, um, when we open up our gymnastics studio,
Hmm.
I'm gonna need you to get this, this, and this.
Hmm.
And it's like he just said it so
Hmm.
effortlessly,
Hmm.
like he just knew what he
Yeah.
asked me he was going to get.
Yeah.
But that's the responsibility, like of a father and of a
Hmm.
leader. Like they expect for you to come through and follow through no matter what they give you.
And I think that's important because what you've done is you've you've created space for him to believe, right? That something is possible. Matter of fact, he believes it's possible so strongly that how he says it is like there's not even doubt into whether or not this is happening. He hasn't checked now, of course, we know eventually it'll be important for him to understand resources, all those different things that it's going to take to actually make that thing successful. But he believes, and unless you believe that something can happen, it can't happen half the time. You know what I
That's
mean?
true.
Um, and I think that that's overall what you were saying was important. Just overall, just I think one of the key things that stood out is you talked about you and your wife not being able to, both of you all had to choose to go to one area, right?
Mhm.
Back in the day, I think what the conception that people might have gotten from average is failure would have been, man, listen, you at all costs, you got to figure out how to be at both of those things, right? As impossible as we know that that is, right? And as ludicrous as that is, I think that's what motivation, and a lot of inspiration has kind of gotten to this thing where it's almost like, you feel like you're being pushed to have to do the impossible. And that's why I said that, what we're trying to do here is talk about everyday greatness, right? What does it look, and everyday greatness, is not always flashy. Everyday greatness means that you'll have to make a decision. It's a good decision, but it's a good decision that might disappoint one,
Mm-hmm.
and it might get somebody might be sad about that decision. But again, I don't even want to use the word just the word good in this moment, right? Maybe the word that I should, because how we use the word good can kind of be funny sometimes, right? I would almost want to say healthy, right? You and your wife had to make a healthy decision for the family.
Yes.
Even that healthy decision, though, could have made one of your sons disappointed
And
because,
the
yeah.
that's so true. And the one thing about it is sometimes you have to do things intentionally. Like, so by nature, me and my oldest son, even though we have the same name, same first and last name, he has a middle name, I don't.
Mm,
Um, our personalities are different.
mm,
I'm more aligned with my younger son. He loves basketball. We do things alike a lot. Me and my wife intentionally make sure that we find time and ways to interact with the child that we are not as alike,
mm,
to show them that we love you so much that we will, purposely and intentionally do things with you that
mhm.
just you like. My son right now thinks I like gymnastics. I'm not saying I don't, but I know the only reason why, if I do, is because of him.
Mhm,
It is not a personal desire of
mhm,
mine,
mhm, mhm,
but that's kind of, purposely, making sure that you show people that I care about you
mhm,
and I'm
mhm,
invested in you.
mhm,
And what happens is now, even though he acts more so like his mom,
mhm,
he likes to be around his mom. He only talks about gymnastics with me.
mm.
When it's something that he wants that's gymnastics related, if it's something that he wants somebody to look at his form and whatnot, he goes to me. I don't know why, because sometimes he thinks I'm mean because I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
tell him like it is. Like, I'm not gonna give you no you my son, you look good. No, if you look bad, me and him, and I try to do it respectfully and in a way
Mhm,
that he understands.
mhm,
Son, that sucks.
mhm,
Son, that's not good. Come
mhm.
back when you get a little bit better. But we have built a relationship enough for him to kind of want to share, the most intimate thing or the thing that he loves the most with me.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
kind of our bond. That's our
So
bond that we had.
so then that transitions, and one of the things I want to be able to do on this is to be transparent where possible.
Mhm.
Um, and it's that level of where you are with your children, right? Is where I hope to get to with at least my two oldest.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying? And of course, there are dynamics. There are things like divorce and all this kind of stuff, which has severed. Um, I don't want to say severed the relationship, but it has caused the relationship to wane
Mhm.
a bit. You know what I mean? There are extra hurdles and extra obstacles that I have to go through in order to make sure that the connection is there. And by all means, I've done my best to go in and jump over those, right?
Mhm.
But when you talk about, so again, when we talk about averages failure, I want to see myself and my relationship with my children get to, and I would say I have a decent relationship with my children. It's a healthy enough relationship. Like we only go through what most children go through, children and parents go through anyway, for the most part.
Mhm.
But I see another level when I look at, let's say, you, and again, this isn't in terms of saying comparison that my journey is going to be your journey, right?
Right.
But it just says that there's something healthy that I see to aspire to. There's something that I see in some of my other friends to aspire to, and that I, who knows if I'll ever get there, but I at least want to I at least want to pursue it
Mhm.
in a balanced way.
Right.
I want to pursue. Why? Because there are certain things that are important enough that, if other things got to get shoved to the side, they got to get shoved to the side, and for me, that's one of them. my children growing up with not even the activities itself per se, right? But with the character, that's being instilled in them from this age. Because yes, your son is doing gymnastics or what have you, and another son is doing basketball. But I think the bigger thing is, while they're getting that skill, it's the character piece that they're developing. I'm learning how to communicate with dad. I'm learning how to get negative feedback but not have to respond in a defeated way. The feedback is for my growth, things like that, right? Those are some of the things that I'm trying to pursue right now for my two oldest, at least, and my youngest, who is very, very young now, pretty much a newborn. I'm trying to learn what lessons I can from my experience with my first two, so that my youngest has the chance to have the best childhood that I can offer.
Right.
So that's one of the ways that I'm living this mantra. Other things, I think family is a big one in general for me. In general, I'm learning that my best way forward in some ways is to slow down. Right.
That's a hard concept for us to understand.
Yeah. Because for me, with some of when I was a young adult, I don't know if I'm still considered a young adult, but I spent a long time trying to compensate for where I may have dropped the ball as a younger adult. Right. But I've come to realize, like, it's okay to slow down, and again, just let your journey develop. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. And so making sure that the family is getting the time that they need. And even with this show that we're doing, if somebody looks at one of my other YouTube channels, they can see a history where there's a whole lot more glitz and glamour, right? But again, it wasn't sustainable. And so I'm after what's healthy, and not what's flashy. Yeah. What's healthy.
That was one of the
things.
Talk
about a bunch of other ways that we're doing this, and it'll come up, I'm sure, over time. Jump in.
Yeah, that was one of the things that with my wife going back to school, the conversations that we had to have about how is our household going to look with you in school, I'm at work, kids are in school, they in different activities. How is the household going to flow? And women a lot of times have this idea of what they think everything should look like. And a lot of times men have a different idea. And not that my wife wanted perfection, but there were just certain things that she wanted to make sure that were still happening. And I got to the point, and I know I get on her nerves, because I sometimes, my delivery is not always, I don't use my person-centered approach with my wife.
Trauma-informed care.
Yeah, it's not trauma-informed all the time. And I let her know when I'm not doing it too. But I let her know, I said, you know what? If nobody's dying in our household, if we're all able to eat, we have clean clothes, and nothing else is going wrong, I think we're doing okay. Some of the things that we sometimes get caught up on are pet peeves, sometimes push us in a direction that actually hinders relationships and make them uncomfortable when they don't need to be. Like, my thing is, if the dishes aren't done, is that the end of the world?
Right.
Can we put them in the dishwasher, or can we figure out a schedule in which, okay, we're doing dishes Monday, Wednesday, Friday? But I don't want that to be the argument, because when you're doing something on the level of going to school in an accelerated program, and we're still trying to figure out how to keep the house in order and financially do everything, the dishes can't be the thing that break us. That's petty. So let's try to find and make sure that we're really focusing, or as they say, we're majoring on the major, and we're not majoring on the minor.
Yeah.
But that's part of that balance, and that's part of that, really understanding what's important in life. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, we want to have clean spaces, we want to live a certain way, but if your house doesn't look great on a certain day, that shouldn't be the thing that throws you off.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, it's not just about the relationship that gets messed up. It's the attitude and the way you start pursuing other things and looking at other things. And that's the one thing that I definitely in this journey, have been trying to work on personally for myself, is making sure that I'm coming into the situation with the best attitude, and that I'm being as they say, a thermostat and not the thermometer. I'm the one that's actually elevating and changing the dynamic, but I'm not just going off of whatever's going on in the environment.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, I think that's where we can land this plane, man. I think there was some good stuff in there. Hopefully those who are watching or listening in, are able to walk away with some gems that they find helpful as they pursue their everyday greatness. We're just two young enough Black men, who are trying to live full, and make sure that our loved ones, and maybe people who are neighbors as well, are able to live full. And we want to see as many people out there do the same. So with that being said, average is still failure. Don't be average. Do a lot of what Jep was just saying.
Whatever that is.
Don't major in the minors, or what have you. But think about what we said for yourself, and where you might apply this phrase and this mantra in your own life. And remember, you don't have to live my life. You don't have to live Jelp's life. It's about the life that you're living. All right. And where God has you right now, and making the most, with doing the most that you can and the best that you can, with that in a healthy way. Anyway, I don't want to prolong it. We'll see y'all on the third episode. Peace.